Hey, what's up, Yantaraj? You are on with Yan. Welcome back to On with Yan. I'm your host, Yana Burtney, and I'm so happy to be back and revisiting this conversation about self-awareness. We talked last week with Dr. Christina Tracy Stein. We talked a little bit about what things we can be self-aware of, and we had an in-depth conversation about being aware of our feelings and big feelings and how those big feelings feel, and just being able to acknowledge that there are feelings and maybe how we can navigate through those things. And I wanted to take some time and revisit that conversation and talk about some other things that we can be aware of. Feelings are a big part of being aware because they happen all the time, and they may not be per se because of a person, but maybe because of an event. Or a simple example, maybe you're sitting in traffic and somebody cuts you off, or the light's not turning red, or you're hitting every red light and you're starting to get aggravated, you're starting to get frustrated, and then there's an outburst of energy or emotion because of the outside factor. And somebody once said, are you a thermometer or are you a thermostat? And I really enjoy that question or that quote, because oftentimes, are you letting outside things influence how you're feeling, or are you setting the tone for how you're going to feel? So sometimes we wake up in the morning and it takes us a minute to get going, and we don't take the time to set the day off right. So we end up feeling like everything that's going on in that day is dictating that feeling, that emotion, and how we respond to everything else. So maybe I wake up in the morning and I don't take my time and I don't set myself up to have a really great day. Then everything little that happens, every inconvenience, every minute setback will cause me to have a negative response, a negative emotion, and a negative attitude. And in that case, I would be the thermometer. The outside things are causing me to have feelings about how I should be feeling. In other words, a thermometer sits outside and it tells you what the weather outside is. And then that thermometer fluctuates based on the weather. It's warmer, the red line goes up. It's colder, the red line goes down. And a thermostat, you set your own temperature. I want it to be 68 degrees in the house when I'm going to bed. I want it to be 70 degrees in the house when I'm up. And that really comes down to the example of, how am I setting myself up for the day? Am I the thermostat or am I the thermometer? Am I letting everything that is happening or occurring outside of me, like traffic, other people's responses and reactions, small inconveniences, things aren't working, maybe my cell phone is having a hard time, my printer isn't printing, my computer keeps freezing, and those are the things that are making me feel that way. Or maybe it's the other way around. I'm really good at making sure that I set the tone for a really great day, I set a positive attitude, and I'm not going to let those small things dictate that big feeling I might be having. So feelings are a huge part of how we go through the day, and making sure that we dictate how we feel, or be the thermostat rather, is a more important way of acknowledging that. So being a little bit more aware, taking some time, being more aware of what it is that we are feeling, why we're feeling it, and maybe even just taking some time and making sure that it's not everything that's outside of me that's making me feel that way, but it's everything that I'm creating. In other words, I create the positive can-do attitude. Therefore, those outside things aren't going to affect me as much as they would somebody that doesn't particularly pay attention to that, and everything else dictates everything else around them. And the other part of that would be, exercise. And sometimes we don't feel like it, and sometimes it's way harder to do it on those days that we don't feel like it. And so those feelings end up dictating how or what gets done. And that is more of a negative way to use those feelings, because in that case, I'm not going to do my workout. And in that case, maybe I won't read my book today because I don't feel like it. And in that case, maybe I'm not going to get up and practice my karate, or sit down, record a podcast, or stick to a routine that I've had. And so it's important to acknowledge what feeling you might be having, but then either use it for something positive, like, okay, I feel really great, I'm going to go do this, or acknowledge maybe that didn't make me feel so great, but I'm still going to go do this because I'm the thermostat. I'm not the thermometer. Every outside thing is not going to let me dictate how I'm going to handle the next situation, or how I'm going to speak to the next person, or how I'm going to let myself carry myself. We can have a lot of self-awareness with a lot of different things. Feelings are a big component of that, but other things like habits. It's an important thing to be aware of what habits we have. And I said this when I spoke to Christina, when I said, is it 10 years of experience or is it 1 year lived 10 times? And sometimes we get into the habit or a routine of something that we do day in and day out. And that habit or routine might make us feel as if we're being productive because we're staying busy. But in all truth, we're just kind of running a figure eight over and over again based on the routine that we have. And that isn't necessarily beneficial because we then get stuck in the loop of lack of new experiences, and in the loop of just doing, going, being the same thing. And when you do go be the same thing, it's hard for you to grow. And when you're not pushing yourself to those limits, or you're not looking for new experiences, or you're not looking to level yourself up, you're going to be the same person. So that's when it comes back to that 1 year lived 10 times. Somebody that lives 10 years and has 10 years of experiences is aware enough of the things that they want to go try, what they want to go do, and what they want to go see. And when you're deliberate about things like that, that's when you can have more of an authentic experience. You can gain a lot more knowledge. You can have a lot better connections with other people around you because of the experiences that you have and you can bring back with you. And habits are so important, and I love routine, and I love my routine, and I love my habits. And something for me that I have to be aware of is, can I do them better? Because when I get really good at a routine, I don't think about it, and I go into autopilot. So for example, I will wake up, I will drink water, I'll go for a run, I make a smoothie, I sit down and I read, I meditate, I get ready to come to the dojo. So my routine gets really good at being the same. And sometimes it's important to revisit that routine and see, how can I make this routine a little bit better? How can I make it a little bit cleaner? Can I refine it and make it stronger? Is there something I'm doing that I don't need to be doing? So consistently just looking at the things that you're doing and the habits that you have and asking, do I still need to be doing this? Can I do this in a better way now that I've had experience doing it? Should I add something else or change it up a little bit because maybe now it's happening by rote and I'm not really gaining as much from it because I've gotten so good at this routine. Again, going back to is it 10 years of experience or 1 year lived 10 times? But if you take that on to a smaller scale and you look at your month, or you look at your week, or you look at your day, you can refine that a lot easier, a lot quicker if you just look at it at a smaller scale than just looking at the whole year ahead. And a really easy way to be able to do that is just think of your day ahead. Sit down the day before, think about what you're going to do, think about what you need to do, how you can do it, where can you start, how can you make it better, where can you improve it, and go from there. And a lot of the time, finding self-awareness within yourself helps you to understand yourself better, but it also helps you get better. So it might be self-awareness with your feelings and just acknowledging feelings that you have and how you're handling situations. It might be feelings in regards to how you react and talk to people. It might be the habits that you have, because the 1% that people talk about where you can get 1% better every single day because of your habits or because of what you're doing or because of the things that you're implementing is very, very true, and it adds up. But it could also work the complete opposite way, where that 1% is getting you further and further and further away from what you hope to eventually end up in. So the 1% can work against you just as well as it can work for you. So being self-aware is really kind of where it starts as far as making yourself better. And it's really where it starts when you want to improve some of the things that you're doing and some of the things that you're working on. So we can be aware of feelings, we can be aware of habits, we can be aware of how we speak to people. Again, going back to feelings, a lot of the time we speak to people, we may not be realizing how we come off. And from our perspective, because we're so caught up in our head and we're so caught up with all the things that we have to do, things that we have going on, how busy we are, the conversation that we have on the surface with somebody will sometimes come off as we're maybe a little bit rude or short or angry or reactive or responsive or someone that isn't a pleasant person to be around because we're so caught up with what we're thinking about, we don't really realize how we sound to certain people and how we talk to others and how we maybe seem to when somebody wants to have a conversation with us and we explode all over them or we're quick. And that person walks away from that interaction and conversation as like, whoa, I don't want to be around that. I didn't like that. I didn't enjoy that. And you would never know. You'd never know unless you were self-aware enough to pay attention to how that person reacted and responded to you and maybe what you did and what you said. And it comes back to the responsibility thing that Dr. Christina talked about. If it is to be, it's up to me. And unless you are able to take self-responsibility for certain things, it's hard to get better or it's hard to change something, because really changing is just admitting maybe that what you were doing wasn't okay or something that you could do better. And then you have to change it because it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be doing something and then realize, oh, I made a mistake. But once you realize you made a mistake, that's a turning point, because if you realize you made a mistake, the question then is, are you going to keep making the mistake because you've made it once? Or are you going to use this opportunity to say, I made this mistake. I'm not going to continue making this mistake. And this goes back to Brian Tracy, so Christina's dad. And he talks about zero-based thinking. And the zero-based thinking is you sit down and you think about all the things that you're doing. And you ask yourself the question, if I knew everything I know now, would I still do or start all of them? In other words, would you still start working at the job that you have? Would you still be with the person that you're with? Would you still make those same decisions if you knew what you know now? And if the answer is no to any one of those things, that's when you change. That's when you say, how do I get out of this? How do I do it as quickly as possible? Because that's where your responsibility is, and that's where you find out if you can do what you think you can do. Like if you acknowledge that you made a mistake and you can change it, then you can be successful. If you can get rid of all those things that are holding you back because you wouldn't do them again, that's when you can be successful. And he talks about that because that's part of the reason why he has become so successful in what he does and what he did in the past, is because he was able to sit down, he was able to ask himself those questions, but not only ask, he was also able to decide that he was wrong in the past, and he was able to decide, okay, well, now that I know, now that I've realized, I don't have to keep doing it. I don't have to keep doing it at all. And he talks about how a lot of that plays into the success that he's had, and I couldn't agree with that any more than I already have. When you admit that maybe you didn't do it the way that you should have done it, or you thought it was the right thing, and now you got to change it up, that's where you're going to realize where your success lies. And when it's scary and uncomfortable and not easy, and it causes you to feel like you're out of control, sometimes that's the best thing that can happen to you, so that way you can make something happen for you. And there's a book that I'm reading, and I really like a part in the book that was mentioned. And it says something along the lines of, spend some time in an environment that doesn't remind you of who you think you are. A lot of the decisions and things that we do have a lot to do with who we think we are based on the lives that we live, because of the routines and the habits and the place that they keep us in. So you go to work, you get your kids, you come home, you take them to their activities, you go to bed, you do it all over again. And whatever your routine might be, that's the environment that you're in that's reminding you of who you are. So in other words, it's reminding you of, I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm an athlete, or I'm an instructor, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a whatever your routine is, whatever your habit is, whatever your life is, those are the things that are in your environment that are reminding you of who you are. And spending some time outside of that environment helps you understand that it isn't who you are, or it doesn't have to be all that you are, or there are other things out there for you that you could be, and you're not held back by anything to go be those things. You can start a brand new thing right now. You can start a brand new day with brand new attitudes, with brand new habits, brand new everything. If you just take some time and acknowledge that maybe the habit that you have or the environment that you're in doesn't serve you to the full extent that you think that it does. And when we fall into that habit, that comes back to the 1 year of experience 10 times or 10 separate years. Are you getting better or are you staying the same? Are you getting really good at staying the same? Are you letting yourself become uncomfortable? Because sometimes sitting in that fire is what helps you get so much better than you are. And it also helps you understand that you don't have to be something specific or the thing that you thought that you were, because you could do so many other things. So I'm going to let you hear that one more time. Spend some time in an environment that doesn't remind you of who you think you are. It's such a powerful quote, and I hope you take some time to think about that, because everything that you do and have done up to this point is what makes you who you are to yourself. It's what you do, it's what you say, it's how you know yourself to speak, it's how you know yourself to handle things that upset you, it's how you know yourself to handle things that make you happy, it's how you know yourself to handle challenges, overcome them. And you can also recognize that you don't have to continue doing those things if that's not how you like to handle them. And you don't have to keep handling them that same way. So all of this really ultimately goes back to self-awareness and being aware of what we know of ourselves, how we handle ourselves, what we think about ourselves. All of those things have so much to do with who we are that I think it's worth some time to sit down and think, what in my environment is making me feel like I have to continue doing these things? Because back to feelings, how do you feel? How do you feel with your routine, your day-to-day life, with your everything that you are? How do you feel? Do you feel happy, exhilarated, excited, in love with life? Or do you feel like you're just getting through the day to get to the next day to do the exact same thing? What are those things that you're feeling? So all of these things are kind of overlapping themselves, and it goes back to feelings, it goes back to habits and routines, it goes back to being self-aware enough to recognize, like, what am I doing? What can I do better? What do I like? What I don't like? How can I make myself become a little bit better? And what can I change? Like, it's okay to change. Just because you've been this type of person for so long doesn't mean you have to continue doing that. And it definitely doesn't mean that you have to continue making that mistake or continue making that choice and decision. You can change that. You can change it and live it differently and be way happier about it. Like, why stand in your own way? Why stand in the way of who you could be? There's another powerful thing that I heard, and this one is really quite simple and it's pretty short, but it has to do with everything that we've talked about so far. And it's so simple. And the question is what do you have to overcome to become? What in your life do you have to overcome that you do, that you are, to become who you want to be, to become who you think you can be, to become all that you can be? All of those things, all of the things that we've talked about from the first episode and this episode, and all of the things that maybe you're thinking about as you're listening to this, what is it that you have to overcome so that you can become? And I love that line because there are so many things I have to still overcome. There are so many things I still have to be aware of and then be consistently aware of to become. Because I don't want to get stuck in the habit routine that keeps me in the same year 10 times. I want to become better, but I have so many other things to overcome. And I think if we sit with that and we let that work on us a little bit, don't just hear it. Don't just hear the words and let them slide through your brain. Don't just listen to a podcast like this or read a personal development book or you meditate and you think about something. Don't just let that slide through. I think a very important part is to be able to sit with it, acknowledge it, and then work to change it. Because no matter how aware you are of something, if you don't work to change it or to take some action towards it, it won't matter. You could listen to every single podcast, you can read every single personal development book, you can exercise, you could do all of those things and you can think about all of those things, but unless you take action, nothing's going to change and nothing's going to help you become. Because you have to overcome. You have to be aware. You have to take action to overcome whatever that thing you're aware of is in order to become the person that you really would like yourself to be, the person that you can see yourself being, the person that is already inside of you. You just have to figure out how to draw that out. You have to figure out how you can implement certain things, get yourself out of that comfort zone, sit in the fire, make yourself feel uncomfortable so that you can become the person that you think you can be, because you can be that. You can be confident. You can be driven. You can have all the things that you want. You don't have to be stuck in, well, I've done this, and this is what I'm going to continue doing because I think I have to. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, and he says 90% of who we are by the time that we're middle age is our unconscious thoughts and behaviors and emotions. 95% of who you are is habit of your thoughts and your behaviors and your emotions. That means you're on autopilot most of the time. And that means in order for you to get out of that 95% and to make yourself better, you have to think about the things that you can overcome to become. You have to think, you have to sit, you have to take action, and you have to be able to let yourself feel uncomfortable. Feelings are uncomfortable. Action is uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to do something that you haven't done in the past, and it's really uncomfortable to continue doing that while feeling uncomfortable and while feeling like, wait a minute, this isn't me. I haven't done this before. I don't like how this feels at first. But if your body's used to something that you've done for 10 years in the past, you're going to feel that way. And it's okay to feel that way. Feel that way and still do it. Feel through it. Go through it. Overcome to become. Overcome that emotion. Overcome the uncomfortability level. Overcome the, well, I think I can't. Overcome the, my peers say I can't. My peers don't see me like this. My parents never saw me like this. My friends don't talk to me like this. My colleagues at work don't view me like this. Overcome all of those things, because none of those things matter. They don't matter. And you can do something about them with your own action, with your own thought process. But you have to be able to let yourself sit down and think and figure out the things that you can overcome about yourself that you don't like, or those things that you can do a lot better. So that way you can become the person that you want to become. And that person you want to become is already in there. So just take your time, acknowledge those things, be aware enough to let yourself sit down and do that. Make yourself feel that uncomfortability level so that you can take action and you can overcome to become. Thanks for being on with Jan.